Calls us to awaken in him. How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate our lives ever more perfectly to him, how will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
dearest friend,
dearest friend,
beloved God,
beloved God,
great Masters,
great Masters,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
saints of all religions,
saints of all religions,
we bow before you all.
we bow before you all.
Help us to feel your presence
Help us to feel your presence
within our hearts
within our hearts
and within the heart of everything.
and within our heart of everything.
Perfect our vision
Perfect our vision
until we see thee
until we see thee
everywhere.
everywhere.
Om Peace. Please be seated. Virgil starts now.
meditate as I read from Affirmations for Self-Healing on our week's topic, openness. Openness can be a great virtue, but only when it is exercised with discrimination. To be open to wrong ideas or to people who would harm you would be foolish. For it is not with openness that error can be conquered, but with love. Openness of mind is a virtue when it is centered in the desire for truth. Openness of heart is a virtue when it is centered in love for God. Both mind and heart, however, need filters to screen out what is not true and what is not of God. This we can do by referring back for approval to the divine presence within whatever comes to us. We must ever open to truth and to God, but ever closed or at least indifferent to error and delusion. And affirm with me, first out loud with a strong voice capturing the attention of a conscious mind. My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source.
My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source.
True statements remain valid even if hurled in anger.
True statements remain valid even if hurled in anger.
My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source.
My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source.
True statements remain valid even if hurled in anger.
True statements remain valid even if hurled in anger.
A little softer now, taking it more inward. My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source.
My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source.
True statements remain valid even if hurled in anger.
True statements remain valid even when hurled in anger.
And now in a whisper, taking it into the subconscious mind. My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source. True statements remain valid even if hurled in anger. Silently now, my mind is open to the truth, whatever its source. True statements remain valid even if hurled in anger. And broadcasting it from the point between the eyebrows into the superconscious mind. My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source. True statements remain valid, even if hurled in anger. Please pray silently along with me. Divine Mother, let me hear thy melodies everywhere, in the laughing brooks, in the songs of nightingales, yes, even in the roar of city traffic. Behind all earthly sounds, let me listen for thy voice alone. Om. Peace. Amen. Good morning. For those who don't know me, I'm Suryani, and this is my partner Keshava. Hello everyone online. And I am going to read from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. And this week is on faith is a call to prayer, prayer is a call to faith. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapters 7 and 21, we read, "Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Verily I say unto you, if you have faith, and doubt not, if ye shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things, whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive. Paramhansa Yogananda showed by his own example that prayer is a power, provided we believe deeply in that power. When our thoughts and feelings are strongly focused and then united in growing awareness to the divine presence within, they can bring even seemingly unrealistic wishes to fulfillment. When Paramhansa Yogananda was in charge of his school in Ranchi, India, he took the boys on occasional outings to the surrounding countryside. There was a waterfall not far away, he told Swami Kriyananda, where I took them sometimes. It was dangerous to cross there, but I would cry out to the boys, "Do you believe in God?" "Yes!" they would shout back enthusiastically. And so we always crossed in safety. Years later, after I'd gone to America, one of the teachers tried to do the same thing, but he lacked spiritual power. One of the boys slipped on a rock and was drowned. Thus, the master explained, belief alone is not enough. It must be united to one pointed awareness, which leads to self-realization. The Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter underscores the necessity for one such pointed concentration. Whenever the mind, fickle and restless, wanders off from its concentration, let the meditating yogi withdraw it resolutely, spurning every distraction, no matter how alluring, and bringing it back again and again under the control of the self. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Hello again. God, what a joy it is to have a little bit of a chilly morning in Los Angeles. I woke up and was thrilled about it. But maybe that's not the most important thing to share at a Sunday service. The little things, can add up. I actually wanted to share a brief little funny story before I read our Whispers from Eternity. This story that Yogananda shared of asking the boys of Ranchi, "Do you believe in God?" before crossing a dangerous river. I adopted here for our busy city life, and every time I cross this street right outside Santa Monica Boulevard, there's no light for the pedestrians, and it really feels like you're taking your life into your hands every time you cross that street. And every time I'd go with Narayan and Dharmadevi, right before I step into the crosswalk, I'd say sort of, in a cautionary tone, "Do you believe in God?" And then we step out into the road, and we made it every time thus far. So hopefully there's some spiritual power there. I wanted to share this Whispers from Eternity, which is the demand to see God in everything. So I encourage you to pray along with me. O Father, may I behold Thee above, beneath, behind, around, wherever I turn my gaze. Train the children of my senses never to stray from Thee, who dwellest at the heart of everything. Turn my eyes inward to Thy changeless beauty. Attune my ears to silence, that I may hear Thy subtlest music. Breathe on me the heavenly scent of Thy sacred presence. Orient-wise I will worship Thee, placing the candles of my 5 senses on the altar of my love. Thus I will contact Thee and the first pale shafts of dawn. Absorb Thee in the bright light of noon. Expand in Thee with the hidden glow of twilight. And merge in Thee in the silver moonlight. Always will I keep alight on my inner altar the mystic taper of my love for Thee. Oh. There's so many gems in this book, really. It was funny, I felt this morning that I ought to read a prayer from this book on the demand to see God in everything. But I didn't know that one existed in this book, and so I was in the back and I was kind of thumbing through, trying to find keywords, like help me to see You, help me to feel You. And then I asked Suryani, is there one to help see God and everything? And she said, oh yeah. And that's literally the title of the prayer. And pulled it up for me. So this book is incredible. Like Yogananda said, his book, Autobiography of a Yogi, he said it contained his vibrations. This book contains his vibrations, and it contains specific vibrational formula for how to uplift ourselves in prayer, how to build faith. So I would encourage highly to every sincere devotee to read this book. But coming back to our topic of prayer being a call to faith and faith being a call to prayer, I wanted to focus on this next stanza in the Bhagavad Gita from the one that Suryani read. And so in the stanza that Suryani just read, Krishna advises Arjuna to practice concentration, because without concentration we'll never be able to achieve anything to any degree of success in the world, let alone spiritually. And so first we have to learn concentration. But then the following stanza that wasn't included in our reading, Krishna goes on to say perhaps my favorite stanza in the whole Bhagavad Gita, and in it he says, O Arjuna, he who beholds everything in me, who sees me in everything, never loses sight of me, nor do I ever lose sight of him. What an eternal promise, nor do I ever lose sight of him. There was a disciple who came to Yogananda once, and he came when Yogananda was still in the body, and he came and he wanted to be a disciple, and Master said, you've come back to me. And his disciple, his would-be disciple said, what do you mean? And Yogananda said, I lost track of you for many lifetimes, but I will never lose track of you now. And what a beautiful thing to be able to say that, in another story, if those of you who have read Autobiography of a Yogi, when Lahiri Mahashaya, who was Yogananda's guru's guru, met his guru Babaji, he was wandering through the mountains and there stumbled across this old meditation nook and found Babaji, and Babaji said to him, "Oh, Lahiri, you have come." And Lahiri didn't know what he was talking about and said, what do you possibly mean? And Babaji said, "Don't you remember?" He said, "No, sir, I had no idea what you're talking about." And Babaji said, "This is where we used to meditate in your last lifetime." Whoa. And Lahiri said, "I what?" And he said, "Look, here is your meditation mat. Here are your utensils. This is the spoon that you used to eat. And look, I have kept it clean for this moment when you will return to me." And then Babaji touched Lahiri, and in a flash, Lahiri remembered his lifetimes of meditation at his guru's feet. But that's the love of the guru. The guru will wait through incarnations, through the tornado storms of Maya that our soul gets caught up into. The guru waits for that moment of stillness when they can pluck us out and put us back on the road to self-realization. And prayer is, like when a ship gets lost out at sea and they send out the SOS signal. That's what prayer is. Prayer is just broadcasting constantly to the Guru, to God, "Hey, I'm over here and I need help." And the more we can do that, the more the Guru's power will be attracted to us to help us. Until, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, when you behold everything in me, when you get to the point where it's not just crying out for help, but you just are constantly crying out at the Lord's presence in everything, then the Lord never loses sight of you again. And so prayer, it's interesting. Prayer is something that I'm sure we've all done, whether or not we've realized it before. But it's really a practice. Like prayer is a science, just like every other technique of yoga. And I think sometimes we can forget that. Like meditation, when we practice Hang Sa, there's a really specific set of things that we're supposed to do. We're supposed to watch the breath, we move the finger, we say a mantra, we keep our gaze uplifted. And it's really convenient because if you do it properly, then you gain the results. And we can all, those of us who have practiced this technique can all testify that, that teaches us concentration. It helps to interiorize our awareness. But prayer can sometimes feel a little more ambiguous because, basically like the prompt that I'm often given when I'm asked how to pray is just start talking. Just start talking to God, you'll figure it out. And that's actually a good prompt, I think, because then you speak with your heart. But what Krishna is talking about in the reading that Suryani read, that we have to pray with concentration. We have to pray with power. We have to pray with our heart's intention completely behind our prayer. There's Swami Kriyananda made a humorous example of this, where he said, if a loved one was separated from his lover, and then they got on the phone after 2 weeks of separation, and he said, "Oh, my dearest, how I've longed to see you. Oh, the minutes that have passed by have seemed like, wet sand in an hourglass that, clumsily shape their way down to the bottom of this container. Oh, every moment is an ache in my heart at our separation, and I can only wait until we again meet." Meat. Oh, actually, that reminds me. My mother was asking me to go pick up some meat at the store today, and I forgot. Oh, I should probably go do that. Anyway, I'll call you back. And at that point, the poor girl on the other line is not only going to be rather flustered with this young man, but is also going to call into question, is anything he just said sincere? Did he just rehearse that out of a book, or has he been saying that to every other beau of his entire life? And so then, you really undermine yourself when you're not concentrated. And the same thing applies to our prayer. I can say, I'll be the first one to admit, I can't tell you how many times I've been praying for something maybe, higher on the scale of spiritual evolution or lower. But I can't tell you how many times it's been Lord, please intercede on the behalf of my friend, and oh my gosh, I forgot to pick up the chocolate chips for my cooking later. And, when we pray like that, it's sort of like when you're talking to your friend and you keep looking at your phone, the friend's going to check out eventually, and they'll just say, okay, well, you know what, I'll tell you what, when you're ready to talk to me, I'm here. But that's the same thing that God does. The gurus and God, they're always here, they're always ready, but they're just basically saying, hey, listen, I'm just going to wait. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. And the more we can learn that concentration, the more we can really apply ourselves to prayer, we'll begin to get results in our prayer. And the second part of this topic today is that Swami Kriyananda is hinting at that the more deeply you pray, the more deeply you'll develop your faith. And faith is something that I think is really interesting because it's such a touchy word right now, but faith is really beautiful. Swami Kriyananda defined faith as the magnetic power of your underlying state of consciousness. That's worth meditating on, because I'll tell you the first about 50 times I heard it, I had no idea what it meant. But what I think he's meaning is that we all have a magnetic aura. We all have a magnetism of our consciousness that draws to us our circumstances. It draws to us our thoughts. It draws to us our feelings. It draws to us our oppositions, our obstacles, but it also draws to us the power to overcome them. And so Yogananda often said that you should develop your magnetism if you want to be successful, because it's ultimately that power that will give you the power to succeed. That man doesn't rise by his own power alone, but rather he draws power from the infinite consciousness to overcome. But that faith is that power of our underlying magnetism. And so people who have little faith have little magnetism, but people who have tremendous faith have tremendous magnetism. But we have to build it incrementally. Like Yogananda said, we can't say, do you believe in God, and then throw ourselves off a cliff hoping that he'll scoop us up. We have to know that we're stepping into sort of like maybe one step out of comfortable territory. And so to that end, I would like to encourage everybody this week in your prayers and in your interactions with God, try and push yourself one step out of your comfort zone. Not 10 steps, but one step out of your comfort zone to test your faith, to build your faith through the power of prayer. One of my favorite ways of doing this is actually through tithing. This is what taught me, tithing was one of the greatest practices in building my faith. And it was incredibly simple. Because of course, as we all probably feel, I was looking at my finances and thinking, gee, I don't really think I can handle a 10% tithe. But the more I was looking at it, I thought, well, it's possible. I suppose I might be able to do it. And then I took it up as a practice, as a test of my own faith. And I said, okay, God, here's the deal. I'm going to tithe, but you're going to take care of me. Because that's the promise that Yogananda gave. And so I said, let's try it out. So every time I would get my paycheck, the first thing, I'd deposit it and I'd immediately tithe 10%. But every time I did it, I'd say, Lord, you better take care of me, because I'm putting myself on a limb here. I don't know if this is going to work. And it was interesting because obviously, like, I wasn't about to starve. It was just uncomfortable enough for me to really have that dialogue with God. But it wasn't so uncomfortable that I went into pure panic mode. But what was interesting was after 6 months of tithing, I was in perhaps the most prosperous state I had ever been in. Purely from a monetary perspective, a lot of new work had come in at the time, and I found myself with a bigger income than I'd ever had before. And then, funnily enough, I actually left all that line of work, and I found myself with no income, but I kept giving because it had worked. You know, I gave, I tithed, and prosperity came, and I thought it had helped to build my faith. And so then I thought, well, okay, that worked. Now let's take it one step further. So I thought, okay, well, if I could tithe and it worked, and now I have a little bigger sense of faith in the power of the divine working on my side, I said, okay, well, now that I'm not earning any money, let's still give, let's still donate, and let's see what happens. And so this was a little bit more fun. It was a little bit of a greater test because I started I was still tithing as if I was having an income, but I had no income. And I went on tithing like that for the next 7 or 8 months until I got to the point where I was wondering if I would have enough money to buy groceries the next week. And that's where God, I felt, was really testing my resolve, because the first blessing came easy and the second one I had to really work for. But I got down to that last week and I still was, I'd look at a picture of Yogananda, my guru, every day, and I was like, listen, I'm doing the work. You better come in and help me out here. And the week before I would have hit rock bottom financially, I got a new stream of income. And I was completely taken care of. And then a series of kind of miraculous interventions happened for me where I was invited to go on a trip to Iceland. And I thought, I couldn't possibly afford to go on a trip to Iceland. I can barely afford my groceries next week. But then my brother called me and he said, hey Keshava, I really want you to come with me. I'll cover our housing if you can just get there. And a series of things like this, that without me putting out any energy, people were offering to help me. I never even told these people that I needed help. They just felt to offer. And then, seriously, within the next 6 months, I had so many miraculous gifts given to me without having asked for them, that when I was on a plane to Portland, about 3 months later, for a Christmas vacation, someone was asking me about my recent traveling, and I was telling him about this, that, and the other, and he just stopped gobsmacked, and he looked at me and he said, that's unbelievable. I said, how did you do that? And I said, I guess I never really thought about it. It just sort of happened, this person offered this without me asking, and then this worked out, and then that worked out, and this person offered to host me, and then all of a sudden now here I am. And I realized in that moment that was the power of faith. That without trying to arrange all the little strings as my mind could have arranged it, I just said, okay, God, you take care of me. And it was incredible to see that just that magnetic power of my faith, the underlying current of my consciousness, drew all of the necessary pieces into my life to bring success in what I was doing. And so that's what we need to do with every area of our life. When it comes to finances, when it comes to happiness, when it comes to success, prosperity, our loved ones, our family, our living circumstances, do less, pray more. Just try and give your life into the hands of God. And we have to work dynamically with God. We can't sit back and let Him do all the work. But try to see where God's will is trying to flow and put yourself courageously into that flow. The more you can do that, the more you can step courageously into that flow of divine grace, the more you'll find it directing your ship safely through the storms of life. And the more that happens, the more your belief, not just your belief isn't enough, the more you will build your faith on the bedrock of your own experience. Because now, no one can tell me tithing is a sham. It doesn't help you at all, because I've experienced it. I know. And that's what faith is all about. It's the power to know. And so when we do this in every aspect of our life, if we're having trouble at home, and we place ourselves with faith into God's hands, and it works out, then we have a little more faith, a little more belief, a little more love. And when we can heroically, dynamically place our entire life into the hands of God, like Swami Kriyananda did, like Yogananda did, like all of the masters did, like all the great saints did, then we'll find that current empowering us in everything we do.
Green summer fade and winter draw near, my Lord, in your presence I live without fear. Though tempest through snows, through turbulent tide, the touch of your hand is my strength and my guide. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave